Hello, friends. I'm Virginia Reynolds, one of the pastors at Christ United Methodist Church here in Greensboro. I've been appointed to serve here by the bishop and the cabinet, even though I'm an ordained minister from another Christian denomination. Over the next few minutes, I would like to share with you how clergy from other denominations can serve in the Western North Carolina Conference, as well as some of my own reflections and experiences from the past 5 years as a pastor in the United Methodist Church. I grew up as a Southern Baptist missionary kid living abroad, and I knew from early years that I was going to be called to ordained ministry. But as a woman in the Baptist church, this would be difficult. You see, since the mid-1960s, the Southern Baptists had stopped ordaining women. However, after the denomination split, the Cooperative Baptist Fellowship was born, and they reinstated the practice around the turn of the 21st century. But for those who are ordained, positions remain limited in both quantity and the scope of ministry permitted. So I served as a chaplain in a local hospital. Late one evening, after a tragic accident, I sat with the widow, and after several hours, she asked me to consider if I would ever be a pastor in the United Methodist Church, she said, because we welcome women clergy and need your voice and experience in our ministries. Her testimony and her invitation was so real that I decided to visit several United Methodist churches to experience worship and to speak to some of the people. I borrowed a book of discipline and began my research. I read through the entire 2012 edition and was inspired by several of the principles. I especially loved the section which spoke about the history of the United Methodist Church, many denominations finding common ground to become united. Having come from a denomination that seems to be constantly splitting, this was very inviting. I appreciated a practice by which the thoughtful and intentional and international effort was behind every social principle, doctrine, and polity. For you see, in the Baptist church, anything can change with the change of leadership and a congregational vote. Grace? Oh, I knew about love, but grace. 3 types. It was transformational in my understanding of salvation now to look at it through the eyes of grace, and was exhilarating to someone who had only seen salvation through the substitutionary lens. And of course, I appreciated the fact that women in ministry were not only accepted, but welcomed. I also read By Water and the Spirit and This Holy Mystery, along with the United Methodist Church social principles. I was captivated by this idea of sacraments. More than ordinances, it was a means by which God's grace actively indwelled my life. I found the Great Thanksgiving Liturgy compelling. To consider that this same liturgy had been used for generations by the Christian church, and the Methodists used it regularly. So, after doing all this research, I contacted a friend who was a United Methodist Church pastor, and he laid out the plan to follow. The plan begins by contacting the district superintendent. Now, usually it makes the most sense to choose a DS in the area you live or would hope to live, but it doesn't matter. You can contact any of them. The district superintendent set up an interview. I presented my resume, told about my call story, my ordination experience, and my vision for ministry. Having completed that, the district superintendent referred me to the transfer committee. Now, although ministers from other denominations are not necessarily transferring, this is a committee of the Board of Ordained Ministry, and it's a vehicle for vetting candidates. I provided to them an application along with my license to ministry, my ordination documents, my ordination papers, my psychological and medical exam results, background screenings, academic transcripts, and a statement of my Christian beliefs. I sat with the committee for an in-person interview, reflecting on understanding and beliefs and the differences between Cooperative Baptist Fellowship and the United Methodist Church. As in all these interviews, nothing is promised. But if the transfer committee recommends a person for an appointment, the cabinet will consider it and see if there is an appointment available. I found paragraphs 346 and 347 of the Book of Discipline to be especially helpful in defining this process. Now, if a minister from another denomination receives an appointment in the conference, there are various expectations for them. Just like all other United Methodist clergy, we are appointed every year, 1 year at a time, and we are not hired by the church. We participate in a week-long clergy orientation which covers the Book of Discipline, Methodist distinctives, safe sanctuary ideals, and expectations, among other topics. We are accountable to the district superintendent and the district committee on ministry. And each year we provide written work and meet with them annually to discuss our thoughts and our work as they make recommendations for us to continue appointment to the cabinet. Finally, we participate in a mentoring program for at least 5 years, which includes an annual conversation about charge conferences, statistical reports, as well as the doctrine and theological instruction with an elder. Additional expectations include that we complete a course in each of the United Methodist doctrine, polity, and history. And furthermore, if we did not attend a Senate-approved theological program, we are strongly encouraged to complete the basic graduate theological studies in the Wesleyan tradition. Finally, we commit to faithfully represent a Wesleyan, United Methodist understanding in teaching and preaching. If someone you know is interested in becoming a United Methodist clergy in full connection, there is a process for that, which includes meeting the educational requirements and then meeting with the Board of Ordained Ministry of the conference. And if you're wondering, benefits for ministers from other denominations are the same as other clergy in the Western North Carolina Conference. You know, as I look back over my 5.5 years in the Methodist Church, I reflect on the fact that I have chosen to be Methodist. It was not a birthright or something expected by my family. No, instead, research and conversations led me with eyes wide open to align myself with this doctrine of faith and practice. I've experienced and appreciate the emphasis on the practice of spiritual practices, the emphasis on self-care, and a collaborative ministry. I've served on the conference committee, been invited to be on district committees, and know more United Methodist clergy and have worked collaboratively with them than I did in my first 21 years of ministry before. I've noticed that not all United Methodist clergy, however, understand the relationship between the United Methodist ordained clergy and an ordained clergy from another denomination. Sadly, based on the conversations from colleagues in our mentoring group, we often feel we are underestimated because we're newcomers. We bring our experiences, though. Many ministers from other denominations are not right out of seminary, but rather have years of ministry experience to offer in leadership, in teaching, and bringing our business prowess to play. We combine years of ministry with a refreshed, new theological and doctrinal education. We're also bilingual in United Methodist polity, history, and doctrine, and along with our original theological tradition, this allows us to have a conversation with people who are seeking a place in God's world. In a world that is rapidly changing, someone who can explain the differences and can speak as one who chose to be Methodist is so important. Still, sometimes we feel like we're on the outside looking in. Assumptions may be that we're just passing through are common for us to hear. But most of us, we know that to make this commitment to the educational requirements, the polity, and the mission of the United Methodist Church, we have to be all in. There may be an underlying reason we don't seek to be in full connection, but this does not diminish our deep passion for the work, nor our clear and discernible call to serve God through the Western North Carolina Conference of the United Methodist Church. If you want more information about how someone ordained in a different Christian tradition can serve in the Western North Carolina Conference or transfer into full connection, please contact the district superintendent in your local area. You can also contact Reverend Kim Ingram in the conference office for more details. Thank you for allowing me to share my experiences as a minister from another denomination serving in the Western North Carolina Conference. I pray that our ministries will work together hand in hand for years to come.